Adventure Time has a lot of relationships. Most of them are disasters. Finn spends years obsessing over princesses who don't like him back, breaks Flame Princess's trust, and learns about boundaries the hard way. But there is one relationship that just works. And they might be the healthiest couple in animation. But before we get there, we do have to understand why this is something different, as the majority of relationships in real life are somewhat healthy at least. So why are they mostly broken in cartoons? Well, there's this thing with cartoons, right? Drama makes content, so relationships have to be dramatic. The regular show is full of it. They're just shipping people together without really paying it off in the end, for the drama, of course. The formula is pretty consistent. Misunderstandings that could be solved with just one conversation, jealousy arcs that stretch across seasons, breakups and makeups and breakups again. Really, most romance in media works this way exactly. Conflict drives story, so relationships must be constantly in conflict. You might say Adventure Time does this too. Bear with me for a moment there. Finn's obsession with Princess Bubblegum goes nowhere for years because she's literally too old for him and not even interested. When he finally moves on to Flame Princess, he betrays her trust by setting her up to fight Ice King without telling her, and the relationship explodes, pun intended. Princess Bubblegum and Marceline have centuries of unresolved tension that the show hints at, but doesn't fully explore until way later. All of this make for beautiful lessons in the videos we make, and all of that was done specifically for a reason. They learn lessons about unhealthy relationships as they go. But there is one relationship that just always works. Jake and Lady Rainicorn. They're just built different. They're together from episode 1. They stay together through jealousy, meeting parents, pregnancy, and 5 rapidly aging children. Not once do they have a real fight. That one petty time doesn't count. We'll get to that shortly. They just work through things, which should be boring, right? Well, no, not if you ask me. In fact, it's quietly revolutionary. Let me explain why. The first thing you need to understand about Jake and Lady is that they don't even speak the same language. Lady Rainicorn speaks Korean, Jake speaks English, and somehow this is not the problem you'd think it would be. In the episode My Two Favorite People, Jake is trying to balance time between his girlfriend and his best friend Finn. So why not just all hang out together? Problem solved, right? Except Finn and Lady can't communicate with each other like Jake and Lady can, so Jake suddenly remembers that there's this universal translator at the bottom of a lake guarded by evil lake knights, so they go to get it. And the translator works. Suddenly, Finn and Jake are bonding to the point that Jake actually feels left out. Jake is jealous, like actually really jealous. They're doing all the stuff that he does with each of them, but without him. So he does what any mature adult would do. He calls up some random guy named Tiffany and tries to make them jealous right back. It's stupid. Jake knows it's stupid. Finn calls him out, Lady is confused, and eventually Jake just admits it to Lady.
Sorry, I'm an idiot, baby. Forgive me?
Oh, sweet potato, I love you because you're an idiot.
And then they hug it out. The episode ends with Finn saying that they should be stupid forever, and Jake tosses the universal translator away. Wait, he throws away the translator? The thing that lets his girlfriend and best friend actually talk to each other? Yup. The translator was never the point. Jake and Lady have been together since before the show started, and they've been fine. They understand each other through tone, body language, effort. Maybe Jake speaks some Korean, you name it. The translator was just adding more stuff to something that was already working, and it was really only there for Finn, but he can learn Korean anyway. All of this was resolved in a single episode. So that's communication, and it really shows how important it is to just be honest with your partner. But what about the deeper stuff? Well, stay tuned. There's this episode called Her Parents, where Lady's parents are coming to visit, and Jake is absolutely terrified. 1,000 years ago, there was this war between Rainicorns and dogs over territory in the Crystal Dimension, and Jake is convinced that Lady's parents are going to be full of this racist, bigoted hatred for dogs, and that he's going to lose Lady Rainicorn. Luckily, he had a genius solution. He would just pretend to be a Rainicorn. Finn helps him paint himself up with ketchup and mustard to look Rainicorn-colored-ish, and then Jake stretches himself into a Rainicorn shape-ish. This is not going where you might think. Her parents show up wearing universal translators, so they can speak English, which Jake was not expecting. They think he's a handsome Rainicorn, probably because they're half-blind. They think Finn is some weird goblin creature, then a human. Then they assume Jake must be rich because he has a human butler, or meal. Well, everything is going fine, right? They're playing Rainicorn games and having fun in general. And then her parents try to eat Finn, the delicacy dish that Jake must have had him for. Jake snaps. He grows huge, tells them to leave Finn alone, and in the same breath, just admits everything.
Now that's enough! Nobody's eating Finn. He's not my butler, and he's not food. Finn is my friend.
He then retracts to his dog form, ready for the worst. But it never came. Lady's parents start singing. They're happy. Turns out they love dogs because a dog saved her father's life during the war. All that fear was for nothing. They were always going to accept him. This is exactly what I love about Adventure Time. It touches on so many nuanced topics at once and then resolves it in the most beautiful way. This whole situation doesn't make Jake feel stupid for being scared. Lady doesn't get mad at him for lying, even though she rightfully could, and her parents don't hold it against him. Jake's vulnerability was real. The fear of losing someone you love is real, even when it's irrational. And being honest about that fear, even after you've already screwed up trying to hide it, is what actually matters. Honesty. Compare this to Finn, right? Finn sets FP up to fight the Ice King without telling her, using her own insecurities because he just wants to see what'll happen. It's a betrayal of trust disguised as curiosity. When she finds out, that relationship is over. Jake's emotions, his fear, made him do something stupid, sure, but it's his honesty afterward that saved it. Finn's emotions, his curiosity, and potentially his fear deep down, made him do something harmful, and his inability to understand why it was wrong and to even be honest about it afterwards is what really ended it in the first place. One relationship survives because there is a foundation of trust. The other doesn't, because there never was any. But everything so far still doesn't make them the perfect cartoon couple. But this next part, I actually think it does. In Lady and Peebles, Princess Bubblegum and Lady Rainicorn go looking for Finn and Jake, who have been missing for 3 weeks so far. They fight through this horrifying bioengineered dungeon, or at least it looked like it was bioengineered. Lady gets knocked unconscious. Bubblegum has to fight Ricardio, stuff like that. They rescue the guys, and at the end of the episode, Lady tells Jake something in Korean. He stares at her and says,
I'm puppies?
and that's it. Credits roll. That's the end of the episode. Jake processing this massive life change, this huge news. So hang on tight, those children come way sooner than you might expect. The next episode we see them dealing with this is Jake the Dad, where Lady has already given birth to 5 puppies who start to age rapidly. Jake is pretty overwhelmed and also massively paranoid, to the point where he can't even sleep because he's worried that something will happen to them. He's using his deceased mom's hologram message for parenting advice, which wasn't perfect to begin with. As he falls asleep, the puppies wander off into danger, or at least what Jake thinks is danger. This could easily be a relationship episode. There's so much going wrong by any means, and there's so much that these two need to talk about. Jake could be seen as the one not pulling his weight in the relationship. Lady could resent him for some bad reasons, because he's lazy, or because he's paranoid, or because of other things, but he is still trying his best, right? Adventure Time doesn't do that to them. It doesn't need to. The conflict, the real conflict here, isn't between Jake and Lady, it's Jake learning how to be a dad, and Lady is right there the entire time supporting him through it. They're on the same team. They have been from the start. No need for petty fights, for made-up drama. They understand that parenting is new to them both, and they're willing to forgive each other for these kinds of mistakes. By the end of the episode, Jake moves back to the treehouse with Finn because the puppies have already grown up. Rainicorns age fast. Also, the puppies had to save Jake in this episode, so they really can handle themselves. The episode shows this quiet acceptance that parenting looks different than you might expect. There's always issues that come up, there's always different problems, there's always conflict, right? Both Lady and Jake are kind of stressed, but all the challenges that do occur don't impact their bond. Adventure Time could have made the pregnancy a season-long arc. Will Jake step up? Will Lady feel abandoned? Will they break up over the stress? Will there be dramatic reconciliation in the season finale where Jake proves that he's worthy? But no, Adventure Time just doesn't do that, because that is not what happens in this healthy relationship. In healthy relationships, you really do face life's problems together. Money stress, family drama, career changes, kids. These are all real challenges, and Jake and Lady show us how to go through it in a healthy way. It's kind of boring in the way that functional things are boring, right? Seeing a building collapse is thrilling, but that building over there, standing up doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, kind of boring, but it should be that way. It shows us how a building is supposed to work. And the best part about it is how it also reflects on Finn. Throughout the show, Finn is the one learning what healthy relationships look like, and he has to figure it out in real time through failure, unlike Jake, who seems to have it all figured out. His obsession with Princess Bubblegum goes on for years. He does things to try to impress her, makes everything about getting her attention, and in the process doesn't really see her as a full person. She's nice about it, about this relationship thingy going on, but is firm in her rejection, and eventually Finn moves on. Then the whole Flame Princess fiasco happens. At first, it really seems like growth. He's dating someone his own age, someone who actually likes him back romantically, but he still doesn't get it. After the breakup, Finn actually spends time dealing with it. There's this episode called Bun Bun where he apologizes to her again, years later, because he actually eventually, finally understands what he did wrong the first time. And they become friends. Legitimate friends. And then there's Huntress Wizard. So, I'm not going to talk about this today as we've actually massively covered her before, so if you want to know how Finn finally learns what a healthy relationship looks like, click here to watch it. In some way, you can draw a direct line from Finn watching Jake and Lady his entire life to this moment. Now, obviously, their relationships are wildly different. Jake never even had to learn these lessons because he already seemed to know them, or perhaps he learned them off screen, maybe even before the show started. And hey, Huntress Wizard and Finn are very different people from Lady and Jake. Finn had to learn how to be in a relationship, any relationship, during the show, while we were watching. And having that example of Jake and Lady in front of him every day, of what a functional relationship looks like, it matters. You've probably had moments where you were Finn, right? Maybe you were obsessed about someone who wasn't interested. Maybe you've done something that seemed harmless, but crossed a boundary that you didn't know was there. Maybe you're still learning about what it means to be honest about your fears instead of hiding them behind elaborate lies made out of condiments or other things. Or maybe you're dealing with the opposite. You're with someone and things just feel easy, like you get along with them, you don't have any big fights, you like all the same things, and you just get along, and you're wondering if that's okay. If real love is supposed to have more drama, like all the shows you watched. Maybe you're supposed to have a fight every now and then so that you can get along afterwards and make up. But that's not the case. Maybe you learned the wrong lessons from a lot of the shows, from a lot of the relationships that you've been observing this entire time. Maybe you've been surrounded by bad examples of relationships and you've internalized some of that. So, keep in mind whenever you're watching the next show, whenever you're watching Adventure Time again, to look at what good relationships look like, and to imbibe and to understand that honesty, that integrity, and that trust, along with many other qualities, actually make a good relationship, a loving, deep, kind relationship possible. For me, for you, really for anyone, as long as you put the effort in, as long as you learn from your mistakes, and as long as you really try. This is why it can be so important to have couples like Jake and Lady in your life, to actually be around healthy working relationships. People to set the right example for you, to guide you through your mistakes just by existing and interacting with each other. Kind of like with Finn, who always had Lady and his brother around as a good and sometimes bad example. But that brotherly love also doesn't last forever. Jake is not always there to help Finn through his worst moments. If you want to know what his worst moment is, click here to find out. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.